Hello there, I'm Callum Johns, and welcome to the EU in Review, where I review the Star Wars Expanded Universe as I experience it. This time I'm going to be going through even more of the classic Marvel Star Wars run, the original one, back in the 70s. And this time it's issue 39, and this is actually going to be covering the Empire Strikes Back adaptation over this story arc. So issue 39 is written by Archie Goodwin, illustrated by Al Williamson and Carlos Garzon. Sounds cool. Garzon. On the cover, Vader looks like he might be a bit sad. Don't know why. And just from the first page, the art inside is markedly improved. It's actually quite good. They're a lot more accurate to what the actors actually look like. The dialogue is still different to the movie, of course. It's still saying it much more like the original comic run has said things as they go along, and they're based off the original script, so it's a bit different. And it's interesting how much of a different feel it gives when they do have the different dialogue. And yes, because the art improved, they finally drew Chewie right. For the whole time up until this point, Chewie looked off, he didn't look quite right, but then he finally looks right in this. Jabba the Hutt is spelled H-U-T instead of H-U-T-T again. Minor thing, but yeah. And it's interesting that it mentions the bounty hunter on Ord Mantell like it does in the movie. And that is actually covered by a comic strip written by Archie Goodwin and penciled by Al Williamson, originally appearing in a newspaper, but then it's reprinted in Classic Star Wars 1 by Dark Horse, and Classic Star Wars 2 and the old StarWars.com actually had it up as well. But unfortunately you can't find as much stuff on the new StarWars.com. They got rid of a lot of it, so you can't access it, which is annoying. I find it interesting that Han is wearing a longer, thinner looking coat than the rugged, puffy jacket thing. And there's also something around his neck that's different, which is cool. Han mentions gank killers, and ganks are expanded upon in other EU stories, which is cool. In the narration, it calls a lightsaber a light blade. I don't know why, but I guess that's what they want to call it. It's interesting as well that Luke actually gets down before slicing the Wampa's arm off, compared to the movie version where he sort of slices the Wampa's arm off as he falls down. A bit more suspense in the movie version. I like how there's a little joke about the droids turning on a heater in Leia's room and things got wet. And of course they get wet because the whole thing's made of ice. That's funny. It's also interesting, the difference is it doesn't have Han slicing open the Tauntaun. He only grabbed some gear. So I really like how George Lucas changed it to slicing open the Tauntaun. Leia actually calls the medical droid 2-1B, so that's actually his designation, but it's interesting, she says it out loud in the comic compared to the movie. And it's interesting that the advanced station gets destroyed. So there's an advanced station, but the probe droid does it. But they don't actually, they have a probe droid that doesn't get destroyed, and then much later Han shoots the probe and does something like in the movie. And that's actually after Luke's rescue as well. And they talk about the probe droid while looking at the remains of it, rather than while doing other things, so the movie just cinematographically did it differently. It destroyed itself so they couldn't recover any of it, I guess, is the mindset behind how it's shown in the movie. So issue 40, again written and illustrated by the same people. It's interesting how it foreshadows a deleted scene where 3PO takes off the danger sign to one of the doors, and then the Empire opens the doors and the Wumps come out and attack them. I love that deleted scene. It would have been awesome to leave it in, but it wasn't meant to be. And to be honest, probably would have been useless other than for a joke. Luke has some sort of mask after leaving the Bacta tank, so you got a bit of a breath mask thing, which is a bit different to when you see him come out of the tank and then just the next shot in the movie you see him laying on the bed without any extra support. It's interesting as well that Leia almost kisses Luke a first time before the part where she's fighting Han, and she's interrupted by the droids. So that's interesting how they just keep building on that love triangle thing. And they've done that even when they've read the script and know what the twist is. Although, no. Actually, it could have been they read a script that didn't have the twist in it, and then only when they got to that part in the comics they were told the twist. Which could actually be an interesting way, because George Lucas didn't tell the other actors other than Vader, David Prowse, or... No, it might not even be David Prowse. It's probably David Prowse and James Earl Jones that were told it. So they were playing the character, they didn't understand it. But they did practice with other lines until the actual take. But anyway, the part where Han spies, like she kisses Han to spy him. It makes much more sense to me than she actually loves him because the whole brother-sister thing. But anyway, it's just after, but of course they have different dialogue, so it seems like they improvise a little bit or workshop some different ideas for what the dialogue could be of how Leia insults Han and that sort of thing. But yeah, it made it sound better in the movie, to be honest. And the feet on the AT-AT are a bit weird in the comic. So the thing I was thinking of is both of the left side one, the right side ones move at once. But why? It would topple over if it did that. I was thinking more like it was a dog where they go sort of diagonally. And as shown in the movie, they sort of walk one leg at a time. So I guess it's artistic interpretation of the movie. There seems to be more space put around the action, which is interesting here. Maybe in movie form it just gives off a bit more of a vibe of urgency, but I felt like there was a lot more padding and less urgency surrounding everything from reading the comic. Issue 41, same people. Not many notes on this one, but the lightsaber colour is more accurate and the lightsaber actually looks better. And there are 17 ships destroyed by the Star Destroyers and they're escaping. Issue 42, this is all done by the same people. So written and illustrated by the same people. It mentions the ground being spongy for the space slug, which is an interesting way of describing it. I guess interior things would be spongy. I don't know. A different part of Luke's training is shown, which is actually quite interesting. So it actually shows more training and builds on it. And there's actually proof that Luke's training goes for longer than is shown on screen in the movie. Because it actually has a page where it's a montage sort of thing that shows that he's doing much more than just what we see in the movie. So George Lucas, when he was thinking of what to put in the movie, must have just picked the parts that he thought were the most important. Which also could have been Irvin Kershner that chose that. But both working together. It's cool. One thing with the art though is that Yoda is tiny in comparison to Luke. He's bigger in close-ups, but in wider angles, it's tiny for some reason. Also, more lines from Boba Fett. So we have Boba Fett appearing, of course, and he actually says more lines than in the movie. Also adding to how long Luke's training took is that the Falcon's hyperdrive wasn't working, so they will presumably have to travel to Bespin at sublight speeds. Another interesting thing. And of course, they don't, in the comic, they don't actually mention any backup hyperdrive or anything, which I doubt they would actually have backup hyperdrives in ships, because ships only have one hyperdrive and that's it. Issue 43, also written by Archie Goodwin and illustrated by Al Williamson and Carlos Garzon. The Dark Side cave is actually a tree, which is interesting. It's not a cave as much in this comic. I mean, it goes underneath the tree, but it's more like he goes inside of the tree in the comic than he goes into a cave. And here's the return of the shirtless for no reason. Luke is shirtless in the scene for no reason. Of course, he has his tank top on in the movie, but He's shirtless like Han is in some of the earlier comics as well, which is weird. Han kisses Leia straight off the bat on Bespin. It's more rushed than the movie, it feels. And they did, yeah. The scene with the I love you, I know is a lot better than what we get in the comic here. The I love you, I know is later on, but yeah. It doesn't show Chewie retrieving 3PO's pieces. R2 sucking swamp water up into the X-Wing was a bit weird. Is he using it for coolant or something? Why would, if you're gonna use it for drinking water, you want to purify for sure. That'd give you diseases for sure. I do find it interesting how Cloud City has a bit different look, or it just shows different areas in this comic compared to the movie. But I like it. Luke sees the visions of his friends twice actually in the comic before he decides to help his friends rather than just showing it the once in the movie, which is a bit more impactful. It goes on while he was training, it's haunting him more than actually how it's shown in the movie, that he just instantly goes, I'm gonna go see. And George Lucas has said that he thinks it was the right decision to go and help his friends rather than stay and train. And that's what George Lucas was trying to say with that story decision, which is cool. Lando says this deal is getting worse all the time to Lobot, actually, instead of mumbling it to himself or muttering it to himself. And Han is frozen in carbonite as Luke enters the atmosphere. So the moving timing was a bit better. They give you a feeling in the Empire Strikes Back movie that there's a bit more time passes between Han being frozen in carbonite and Luke entering, but then you also have Luke coming in as they're carting Han out, so semantics. I feel like Luke more entered the system rather than entered the atmosphere in the movie for the time it was. But it works. It might be what was originally intended, so that's good. And of course, because of the dialogue, it doesn't have the iconic I love you, I know lines because Harrison Ford improvised. And yeah, that whole scene with the I love you, I know is a lot better in the movie and much more impactful. So issue 44, this is the last issue of the Empire Strikes Back adaptation. Duel the Dark Lord. Yeah, they make it sound fantasy type a lot more than sci-fi. This is the first time Luke actually fights Vader, as previously it was only Baron Targ in the previous Marvel Star Wars issue. And that's actually an interesting little detail to put in, because they definitely wanted to put the fight off until George actually wanted it to happen, and that was in the movie. Or in Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Leia said it first, it's a trap! In Empire Strikes Back, and it has it in this comic too, so it was always going to be there. But of course it doesn't sound as gruffly good as Admiral Akbar's "It's a trap!" Of course we all remember that one a bit more, but Leia said it first anyway. Interesting fact. The group seems more intent on chasing Boba than just escaping, which is I find interesting. Of course in the movie they do chase after Boba to try and save Han, but it's with this feeling that they were going to escape at the same time, but with this it seems they don't really care about escaping, they're just chasing Boba. The Empire doesn't seem to be chasing them as much, which is interesting, but not really. They're chasing them and Boba escapes. They don't do the shot off at Slave One. Carbonite says about that it's liquid metal. How they draw it in the comic, it looks hot. It actually glows bright yellow, like lava sort of thing. And that's actually different looking in the movie, which is interesting. They did the whole steam thing and you're not really sure in the movie. Could be technological limitations, or it's just they wanted to portray that it's actually different to just, if someone was covered in lava, they're gonna die. Vader taunts Luke a lot more with speaking to him and goading him than in the movie, which I found interesting as well. And the weather vane snaps and Luke falls as the Falcon goes under him, rather than him holding on to it and hanging there with his what's left of his limbs, which I find interesting. So, and overall art is much improved for accuracy, of course, and enjoying just reading the different interpretation of the script, which is interesting, and what must be based off of the earlier script. They probably kept most of the dialogue relatively intact. What are your thoughts on this Empire Strikes Back adaptation? I find it quite interesting, and of course the movie did it better. So the original trilogy is unique in Star Wars in that the movies are actually better than any of the adaptations that I've read, at least. In the original trilogy, the prequels, I find the books a bit better, but as far as the original trilogy, the novelizations and the comic adaptations aren't as good as the movies. Yeah, having fun reading these, and of course S-canon, so they have a little bit of leniency in hindsight with that. So hopefully the art continues to improve, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed listening to my thoughts on these, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.